Hello, welcome back to the Intellectual Abattoir. Episode 25. The reason I'm laughing is I don't know if you've seen, I've got this little stick what I thought I might use for when I do my solo ones. I've started using it to turn the camera on and off. And for some reason, I literally think I'm like Elon Musk or something. I feel like the biggest genius on the planet. Anyway, here we have for your... like Rod Serling, for your consideration. One, Paul KERENSA, comedian. Didn't really talk about comedy as much. I did want to. Actually, I wanted to ask him. Well, I didn't, so there's no point getting into it now. And he is a Christian man, and he is involved in, I think I got it wrong, and I said thought for the day. He's a pause for thought. So I tried to say at the beginning, I didn't really finish the thought, surprise, surprise, but he's a proper Christian. I don't know what to call him. What to say? Hardcore Christian, but he believes in the Bible and goes to church. Whereas you could say, I'm a Christian, but like very. So he's sort of like organised religion guy. Very fascinating chat. I hope I got him on. At one point I say this is kind of like these are the sort of everything I wanted to ask a Christian, but didn't want to seem insensitive or prying. Pun intended. Always go into conversations in good faith. We must, and as you will hear. He and I have very different opinions. We don't. In no way do I bring them up, but I am a conspiracy theorist, and especially about the pandemic. And Paul thinks pretty much I could get a sense the exact opposite to me, which is absolutely fine. Can you see what happens? Can you see how it can be? We can build bridges between the echo chambers. He thinks something I don't. We had a lovely, perfectly fine, pleasant conversation that was probing and interesting, and you can challenge ideas within yourself without resorting to tribalism or what was it? I was going to say sectarianism. I don't know if that's what that means. Is sectarianism like like religious tribalism? Who knows? But it was a good conversation. We start off chatting about. I didn't know this about Paul. He had he was a poorly child, hospitalised. He talks about that at the start. Strangely, this kind of thing, sick, poorly children, you would imagine could be something that would make you question or lose faith. If you had a poorly child, you would be like, well, I've been a good person all my life, and there can be no God. My child's gravely ill, but that's where Paul found his faith, or just he said he had to. There's no point in me going through it. You're going to watch it in a minute. But a really fun conversation. I got to ask a Christian if they believe in the devil, which I don't know if I've ever done that. And it's something I've always wondered. When you sort of like, and I wanted to ask him, well, they put in the comments, if the devil is real, and it's a big if there was a devil, and you had to bet your everything, what incarnation is the devil in? Is it paedophiles? Is it other religions? Could you say that is science? Is science the devil's religion? To tell you that everything's there's no meaning, or there's no real, atoms don't care about morals. Seemingly, maybe they do. I keep going about atoms. Hey, have you guys heard about the delayed causality? Retro causality because of the delayed choice experiment, which is sort of like a follow up to double slit. If you haven't, I'm not going to explain it. Look into that. There probably could be a God, and it's mind bending. Basically, the thought is that atoms behave differently whether we're observing them or not. If you observe them at a later stage when they're hitting the photograph, the double slit experiment. If you observe them at the point of detection rather than the slit, they appear to go back in time and change depending on whether you're looking at them or not. So the point you're observing the atoms, they change, but they would have had to have been changed at the point before when they went through the two, one or the other slit, or both slits. I told you I should have followed my own advice and not explained it. Anyway, like, subscribe, share, comment, interactions. I'm trying to grow the channel. I want to get to triple figure subscribers. I'm not going to stop until I've done 100 episodes. whether I should or shouldn't. You know the drill by now. I'm a genuinely intrigued moron. And that's all any of us are. Some of us are more informed, or there's being informed is a spectrum. No one knows it all, and there ain't no one who's got nothing worth knowing. So the guy that off the chase, he knows a lot of things, but he doesn't know everything. And then the person who goes on the chase and doesn't know the capital city of France, there's something you can learn from them. Let's not be so judgy. Anyway, Paul KERENSA, it was his birthday at the time of recording, so I really double appreciate him doing it. And anyway, come on, let's get into it. And there we have it, here on the machine, all the way from, well, we'll get into where from. It's Paul KERENSA. Hello, Paul.
Hello, lovely to be. Thank you for having me, Justin. Thank you.
No, I can't. I hope I don't overdo it, but gushing. But I always appreciate anyone coming on, and especially because it sounds like you've got a bit of a manic time of it at the moment.
Oh, gush away by all means.
Yeah, no,
right.
I don't want to be too sycophantic, but then some people like it. It's reading in the room, isn't it? So how are you? I haven't seen you. I was trying to work it out. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's been it's the thing. I kind of feel like good old Facebook, however long that lasts, means that I feel like we're in touch more because I just see your name whiz past. I
do too.
Updates appear, but actually you can go for years or decades without actually seeing people.
It's certainly been a decade, I think, anyway. But anyway, I wanted to have you on because you are... Do you do like the... is it the Thought for the Day stuff still?
I do, yeah. So I do the Radio 2 version, Pause for Thought, which is
Pause for Thought, sorry, yeah.
Same thing, but under it. The Radio 4 version is Thought for the Day.
Got you.
Radio 2 version is Pause for Thought. I do it not quite as much, but I do about 3 or 4 a year, and other bits and pieces like that in BBC's own. And
So you are. So I was thinking of how. I'm sorry, I'm just messing around with trying to get that full screen somehow. That's not, but I was trying to figure out or trying to work out how would you describe yourself? You're obviously a Christian.
I am. I'm one of those.
And... No, but that's the thing. There's levels, isn't there? So I don't know. I would say an Orthodox Jew or a fun. But so would you say because you're, what would you call it like?
So I'm a Christian. I go to church. I go to a Church of England church. But it's a funny thing, isn't it? At the minute, especially the Church of England. I used to do a little, bit on stage. It was like, chicken in England, whisper it sort of thing. And then now that's like a thing because since the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Archbishop of York and all of these different things, it's a time of crisis in the Church of England. Anyway, but I grew up in the Church of England generally, and that's just where I've gone. But actually, I go around the country doing events and gigs for different churches, all sorts of shapes, sizes, colours, Baptist, Methodist, Quaker, candlestick maker, right. Whatever, and you can see different flavours of it all. So I go to a variety of places.
So my youngest son is he goes to church, which he's come upon independently. But he goes on a Saturday. I don't know what sort of church that is. His girlfriend's Brazilian, so right. I don't know. He's Christian, but I don't know what sect or whatever.
Well, the other thing is the church I used to go to, which was really had a great community sort of outward focus, and Sundays was for the service, but rest of the week they've got Narcotics Anonymous, ballet class mixed in with the Narcotics Anonymous. It's a heck of a meeting, but they have all this stuff throughout the week. So I used to help run the Saturday morning Dad's Club. Once a month they had a Dad's Club thing. Dads and young kids, they had like soft play, bouncy castle, bacon rolls for the dads, coffee, and you go along and it's just donations for £1 or £2. So it was a nice little, monthly meet up with that stuff. The bacon sarnies were just what you need, especially this like, 2-3-year-old kids who you're just exhausted.
Yes, I've been there.
And a couple of guys who came to that, who didn't come to the church service or anything, but I bumped into one. I saw one in town, and he was introducing me. He said, "Oh yeah, I go to this church. That's my church." He said, "That's my church," and I knew for a fact he'd never been on a Sunday, but he was like, "Well, that's my church because that's where I go on a Saturday for the kids for the Dad's Club thing." So sometimes being part of that is just it's like part of your community.
Yeah, I was going to say community hub.
Yeah.
So you said you were born like your parents religious then, so you've always had.
No, oddly, sorry, that's my hand covering a camera because I'm old and can't work out how technology works. No, I'm the only person in the family goes to church at all, ever has that I know. My gran used to sing in go to Methodist church in Cornwall, back down in the sort of go to chapel on a Sunday, sing a few classic hymns, proper Cornish. But the reason for my route in really, well, a two-part reason. One is when we grew up, it was like village life, country village, and it was like the centre of the village there's a church and 6 pubs, and it was, you just would be part of all of that. And so my parents would send my brother and I to church as, there's like the youth group, Sunday school, the choir, the scouts. And, they just wanted to get rid of me. It's free childcare, basically. So when I came back going, oh yeah, it's good stuff. This that wasn't their plan. I think.
No, I was going to say that because I just had a very nostalgic memory of I grew up in a town, but a small town, just about scraped into town status from a village.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And you could hear the bells on a Sunday, the church bells on a Sunday.
Yeah.
That's quite a thing that I miss actually.
Well,
I mean, it's a really lovely. Sounds like a bygone era that's gone. It might be. I mean, I live in Norwich. I don't know if you know that Norwich is awash with churches. There's so many. I don't know if it's known for that.
Yeah.
But we've got 2 cathedrals and a load of churches. Like they're too close to each other. It's like they're so close to each other, some of them. Yeah. But I don't ever hear the bells. But so you went to church as a kind of like, because that was your community thing to do. That was your bowling alley, if you like.
Well, exactly. So that's one reason. I think the other one is I was not a well child, and I was in and out of Great Ormond Street Hospital for kids. A lot as a kid, and I had 100 operations before I was 5, I think, something like that. And so I was in sometimes for 2-3 months at a time. I think I had 3 times as a kid when it was a bit 50-50 on the operating table. So I was kind of facing those kind of life and death questions that people often end up asking on deathbed.
At what age, Paul?
Well, I was between. I mean, my memories only kick in from about 5 onwards. But I remember being 7, 8, 10,
That's
12.
so young to be, confronted with existentialism, basically.
It is exactly, and I think you come away from that pondering some of those things, and you can go that way, you can go the other way. I mean, the other thing it led me to was comedy, which was, in fact, weirdly, they did a survey. It's quite a rare condition I had. Basically, I had some internal organs born on the outside, which isn't ideal. No. It should be internal for a reason. They're not external. They're inside now, delighted to say, but a few fixings to do, and it's quite a rare thing. So they had a survey recently, a little study of people with the same condition as to what they did as a job, and literally like a third went into healthcare, and a third went into the entertainment industry, which is a really huge amount, of people to go into it, and then a third did other stuff. But it was like, if you're in hospital as a kid, you either want to heal people, like, healthcare, or cheer them up. There's like 3 comedians, a couple of cartoonists, a professional clown, some writers, Also,
do you think if someone like a nurse or doctor came in and they had like a entertaining bedside manner, that must have been such a ray of sunshine that you must have really valued someone that could bring entertainment and joy?
Yeah, well, I remembered it because it partly maybe also it was Great Ormond Street, and therefore that's got a bit of profile in terms of helping out and stuff. So we had like the Arsenal football team of 1985 came around the ward, with their kit on, with a ball, and photos and sign everything. And we had a few. You get a few. I never saw Jimmy Savile, but it was essentially some TV presenters, maybe some pop stars.
Yeah, I know the usual suspects. I can't think of their names, but there was a little circuit of people that were always doing the the Smashy and Nicey parody of charity.
Exactly.
Those people,
a bit of that stuff. Yeah. So that was, and especially when I was in for, I think my most I was in was about 3 or 4 months, and you have visitors of my, obviously my parents would come in, although there's a couple of hours round trip for them because we're not London based. And I had my head teacher came in, and that was one of my strongest childhood memories. The odd teacher came in, and my head teacher, I was only at primary school, junior school, 5, 6, 7 years old. And I remember distinctly, and I'll say this because it's just such a strong memory, that at the school, the joke was that if you win a prize at a thing, the head teacher brought out the Quality Street, and you could pick Quality Street. And he said, but don't have the purple ones. They're my favourite. No one's allowed a purple.
Right.
And all these, and whether or not maybe he hated them and knew that the best thing you do is say that and the kids will take it. And what you get is most kids will go up and just take a green triangle or whatever, or a choppy penny. But 1 or 2 cocky kids would go, I'm having a purple one, So he visited me in hospital, and he gave me a present, and it was a homemade shoebox of all purple ones.
Wow.
Wow. And obviously as a kid, whether or not it was true or not, but as a kid, I'm there in my head thinking, but that's his favourite. And nowadays you can buy a box.
You can, but I was going to say, back then you would have had to have selected them out of the general population.
And of course, in hindsight, I'm thinking, actually, he must have hated the purple ones because that's why he always tried to make people nick them. So he probably stockpiled for years. But it really, that was, as a kid, though, it was so heartwarming. And
I felt that just you describing that.
Yeah, it was just gorgeous. So that, and the entertaining, the people, the sports people or the pop stars, whatever, it does lift you a bit, and hospital radio, they'd always come around doing requests. And I did hospital radio. That was my way into radio, was hospital radio when I was 18, 19. So that got me doing that and got me doing radio. So all of that I'm sure comes from my hospital use.
So so when you were sent down the church, this was prior to the hospital, was it, or around the same time?
Yeah, probably a bit after. I mean, I was in hospital from literally a day old. I was actually born in a hospital. I mean, how often does that happen?
Yeah, exactly.
But I had a lot of stuff between the ages of 0 and 5. So that probably all came first. But then I was in and out, I think, till I was at least about 12, I was in hospital quite a lot. And I would say that going to church stuff came in after that. So, probably.
So you didn't have any experiences in the hospital? Because I know that people can have... Because when you said it was 50-50, were you aware of that at the time? Or
I knew, I think to a degree, I knew it was...
that's so heavy, Paul.
Some of it you look back on. And some of those, I mean, one of the big ones was actually when I was a bit older, when I was 17. And that was a Christmas Day thing. I'd be rushed to hospital for that. I was in for quite a while, and that was very close.
And you didn't have any sort of this was no sort of visions or feelings of something else or passing over, like the near.
No, yeah. Well, no, not particularly. I have no out of body. Oddly, no. The only out of body experience I've got is essentially my bladder should have been in the body and it was out.
That's helpful.
But that's a different thing.
So I understand. So you've found you're starting to find faith going to the church. Now, when you told your parents, "Oh, I'm not just going there because I'm sort of getting it," was there any resistance or shock there? Because I feel like if my parents are quite they're not atheist at all, but I just feel if I said, "Oh, I actually believe," they'd have been a bit like, really, I don't know, they'd have been a bit surprised. Did you face any kind? Did you have to explain yourself, if you know what I mean?
No, I had to explain myself as a comedian. That was something I weren't expecting, but not in terms of the religion aspect. I think they've all been fairly easygoing, and it's like, okay, well, you've found your thing, we're going to go and do that. So I'd be there saying, "Can we go to church on Sunday?" And they wouldn't have otherwise gone. And I think part of it was I need a lift to church because it's not walkable. But part of it also was, well, look, Mum and Dad, you put me in the choir, and part of the deal with singing in the choir is you've got to go to church.
Yeah.
So I think they knew from the get-go. As soon as they put us in the choir, they thought, right, well, we're going to have to take you there. But they've never really gone along with it or anything. And as soon as I was able to drive myself there and everything, I just took over. So no, I think that's it really.
Yeah, it's so funny because I say my 15-year-old goes to church, and when he told me, I had this kind of I thought, well, that is so positive. He's a really positive kid, actually. He does boxing and looks after himself, physical fitness and spiritual fitness. He sets time aside for mindfulness, which is probably a product of people that have grown up on TikTok. I wasn't aware of anything like that. But so it's a very, very positive thing. And they must have been, but have you ever met any resistance? You must meet resistance with people. I remember that, I'm not going to name anyone, but there's a clip where another comedian basically calls religious people idiots.
I've heard a lot of that. Yeah,
it's a very mean-spirited thing that I think that Christians seem to get more than any other faith. I don't really see it spread around much, if that's your experience.
Well, yeah, I agree, and I think there's a sense of I think with Christians, certainly in Britain, I would say there's often that thing of Christians. Well, they look like us. You can't tell who's who. Therefore, we can have a go.
Yeah.
Whereas you wouldn't dare to have a go. someone who's Muslim or Hindu or Jewish because you go, that's more linked with culture and identity, and that would look very bad on me if I start to criticise too much that way. I mean, you saw it with Kate Forbes, the Scottish MP, who was slammed for her beliefs in terms of abortion and same-sex marriages and things like that. I mean, I'm a liberal Christian, pretty, fairly liberal. She had quite conservative beliefs along those lines, and was, all in the papers, and she really lost out the leadership thing because of that. Whereas then Hamza Yusuf did become the leader, who is Muslim, and his beliefs weren't and it's scrutinized in the same way,
Mm.
because in a way you go, okay, well, Muslims sort of, they believe that generally. We're not going to convince them. We might convince a Christian. We won't convince them. I don't know. But there was a sense of society, on a social society level, I think, of that.
Yeah, do you think culturally? I think that's an interesting point, actually, that Christian isn't culturally different enough for us to feel it needs to be respected. It's almost like
Yeah.
I feel like if you're indigenous, well, British, whatever that means, white Anglo-Saxon, I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah.
I feel like my family are lapsed Christians.
Right.
It doesn't feel like you're another. It's just like you're the past in a way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, and it's like there's a sense, I think, that Christianity or religion generally is sort of pre-enlightenment, but I think there's often that sense too that that maybe we haven't thought it through. Whereas I have thought it through, and that's what I believe, and that's just that. But equally, there is that sense, I think, of going. If someone who's anti-religion would go, I'm anti-religion, but I'm going to begin with Christianity. I'll start off
it's a soft target for some reason,
and then they'll do the rest after. But certainly, I mean, one of I've mostly had acceptance on the comedy circuit. It's mostly been great. Just one or two maybe who do challenge, because there is that sense on the comedy circuit, I think, of, well, this is my truth, tell me yours. So I think mostly we respect the fact that someone's got an attitude. You're going to get everything. You're going to get straight people, gay people, drag queens, Muslims, Hindus, Jewish people. They've all got their story to tell, and I think mostly we respect that. One notable conversation I do recall from one of those quite
aggressive atheists, let's call them.
Yeah, quite someone, a self-styled outrageous comedian.
Yeah.
Who backstage in the green room just before I went on said to me, he said, the thing about you is you're off the artistic roll call, because there are places you won't go in your comedy. You just do clean stuff. And for some, not exactly always that clean. But he said, you just do clean stuff. That means there are places you won't go. He said, my comedy, I go everywhere. There's nowhere I wouldn't go for a joke. To which I said to him, and I remember it was a rare upright conversation we just sort of had together, forthright conversation. And I remember saying to him, but you say you'll go anywhere, but I've never heard you do a clean joke. And he said, no, I don't want to do a clean joke. All my jokes, they're outrageous. So I want to push the boundaries. And so all of your jokes are really about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And in fact, I've never heard any jokes about rock and roll from you. I've just heard about sex. Every story you do is sex and drugs.
Edgelord.
And he said, yeah, that's what I want to talk about. I go, well, so there's jokes you won't go to. Yeah. You don't do clean jokes. So to say that if there's certain areas that I don't talk about, I just haven't got that comic angle on certain areas.
But that's you being true to yourself. That's you haven't got that angle of thought, maybe.
Yeah, and equally, and if he's not doing one-liners like Tim Vine and Milton Jones, that's because every performer's different, and we've all got our own attitudes, angles, and where we find humour.
It's funny because I then also, to carry on this thing about the sort of Christian bashing or whatever, I noticed that a lot of high-profile people are refinding or finding their faith, and the shorthand is, so and so's lost their mind. They've gone off the deep end. It's like, why? Oh, they've started to talk about God. It's like, does that mean that? Does that mean they've lost the plot? I know. But what fascinates me, and what this next section is kind of like everything you wanted to ask a Christian, but were too scared to ask. Because I'll tell you where I am with my beliefs. I am closer than I've ever been to.
Right.
It's very difficult for me to fully accept, just because of my background, not anything bad, but just it's I'm 50 basically. And it's something's happened recently where it used to. I'll be honest with you. Sorry, I didn't finish my thought. When there was a thing that where my son said he's going to church, and I saw it as positive, I could still think like the old me, and I would have been kind of mortified when I was, when I was 30, and I don't know why. I don't know why I had that. That wasn't my thoughts. I allowed myself to be culturally tainted. I allowed myself to think, all the things that you see leveled. I did think that, but I don't anymore.
Yeah,
and it's a difficult journey to admit, because even when I say it to my wife, I can see she's a bit like, because we talk about religion, I just go, well, you don't know what knows. But I think it's the thing with me. I can't remember what I was going to say then. But the thing with me is we'll start to look at like science, and you sort of had that. You got those camp. You remember the camp, like you had your Hitchens, your Dawkins, these people that I used to find quite. I used to side with, but then I just found them so obnoxious.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, science, facts. And when you look at science, it supports to me, creationism more than this random. I don't believe in evolution for a thing. I don't know. I just don't believe in evolution.
The thing is, I mean, everyone's got. There's the spectrum of beliefs is huge.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is, it's never as black and white as like
nothing
believing.
Is.
Someone believes this, but I don't think we're never going to find some of those answers.
No,
because
the whole idea.
Yeah, and the whole idea that science can ultimately disprove God, I think all it does is push God earlier and earlier back. Like, okay, well, Big Bang.
We need one miracle, as they say. We need that one, and then we can explain everything.
Exactly. Evolution. Did God create evolution? Did God create natural design? Did God create? I don't know personally that I believe that in 6 days. I think
no,
because I think that's a poem. It's not a history. It's not science. I think it's something. And you've got to look at the context. It's written thousands of years ago by people who did not have access to what we have, and just because they are not writing about DNA or something.
Yeah, it's not a textbook, is it? But it had to be entertaining, I guess. It had to be entertaining.
Yeah, well, it's a tale. These are tales told around campfires, basically, long before, and handed down through generations, long before they're written down. And but we live in it's so easy to think, we live in a world with not just the internet, but with just writing. This goes long before most people could even access that sort of knowledge. And but
every culture's got a version, haven't they? That's the smoking gun, really, isn't it?
I think, and there are certain commonalities. I think also it's well worth separating out a belief in God and an acceptance of that this church is the right church necessarily.
Yes.
Because, of course, there are many churches that have many problems, and they're all, fallible. We're all human, and we've seen the problems of different church leaders, but not just church leaders, politicians, media. Anyone in a position of authority has that sense.
The hierarchy certainly seems to be open to the bad.
Power
going to attract wrong uns or wrong behaviour.
Yeah, and power can go to the head, and people think that they are either beyond rebuke or beyond the opportunity to look into other people's problems. And there's always going to be that human nature problem. So we've got to, I think, always got to keep our wits about us in terms of, is this the right church for me? Is this the right place I belong? And for me, maybe I've been lucky, but I can see my church from here, from my house through the garden. There it is. And they are a lovely community, and they are mostly wonderful elderly people who just, bring each other soup and do the gardening. And they're just a lovely bunch of people. I just see good souls. I just see good people.
Yeah, that doesn't sell any newspapers, though, does it, Paul? You can't write
it doesn't, exactly. So unfortunately, I can't see our church being closed down anytime soon. But I think they're a lovely bunch. But beyond all that, as you say, there's that bigger question. Is there a God? If so, what sort of, what is God? Who is God? What is that plan?
Yeah.
And,
that's what I want to speak to you about, because I want to know how you live your day-to-day life, believing that there is a God. Like, at what level? Because, like, say this taken, like, for example, the COVID pandemic, right? And some people were saying it came from a lab, and some people said, oh, no, it didn't. It came from the market. When you believe in God, there's a level up to all this bickering about the details. Do you just go, it doesn't matter, and whatever it happened, it was God's plan? I don't know. How do you reconcile these kind of, these kind of little sort of skirmishes we have every day?
Yeah.
Do you just sort of rise above it and go, I don't know. How does it work?
Yeah. I wish I could rise above, and I've used the word skirmishes myself, actually. Sometimes when you hear about culture wars and things, sometimes they feel like culture skirmishes, and just like that's today's problem. That's today's issue. That's today's stomping ground, battleground. Hill that I'm prepared to die on, or whatever you want to call it. But so often, it's difficult to rise above it because we all get embroiled in it, and it matters on that day. There's always talking points. As soon as you have a world of social media, we have become reliant on social media as well. And I think we're going to see that change in the next year or two, maybe, as Twitter, X is changing, Facebook is changing. Some are jumping off it, some are finding new platforms, Blue Skies and Threads and things. Some are staying, therefore that's changing the culture of each of them. That's not what you're after at all, but I do think it sort of feeds and has fed over the last few years. Imagine a pandemic where we didn't have social media, and how different that would be in terms of the distribution of information, our little tribal communities and things like that. I remember a couple of years ago now, so 21, 22, 2022, something like that, about the end stages of the pandemic. I remember being in Tesco, and some people were still in masks. I mean, some still are now. A couple of old ladies, literally like mid-90s, bumped into each other. classic look with the handbags and the little trolley and everything, the
Yeah.
little Scotty dog. And one said to the other, saying, "Oh yeah, well it's all of this COVID thing. Do you know it's all fabricated and it was all put out there to suppress the majority." And it was all like said in that sort of voice. And I thought,
Yeah.
wow, she sounds oddly. I mean, it sounded like a conspiracy theory that she'd read. And I'm part of a group, I'm part of a WhatsApp group, and you can't trust the mainstream media. That's the thing. So I've stopped watching BBC, apart from Bargain Hunt. I do like Bargain Hunt. You know, so they got their favourites. But other than that, said, I'm not getting my news now from the newspapers. I get it from this WhatsApp group, and they tell me what's what, you know. But the way they were just gossiping about this.
Yeah, that's funny.
You know, it's an odd mix. We think of conspiracy theories being like, you know, kind of people in basements in America saying these things out.
Yeah.
But this was a couple of old biddies who are just bored and gossipy. And that's the way they are sharing their information.
So I guess that's the thing. And when you were just talking about the different platforms, it actually echoed you talking about the different churches that have their problems. And it's like, like you said, people go into a church with a hierarchy, and the fallibility is the human element, and whatever platform becomes the new platform is all going to be the same people on there, and it's going to fall into the same things. So that's the thing, isn't it? So it's like it's sort of, doesn't matter if it's Twitter or X or Blue Sky or Threads. It's just people will go on there and they'll just you know, they'll sully it. But so do you believe, like, where do you stand on, because I know I saw this famous clip of Stephen Fry was talking to, I think it was an Irish person.
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah.
And he said, if I spoke to God, I'd say, why, like, you were a poorly child, why leukemia, why this, why that. So how do you reconcile sort of like things like tragedies? Do you think that they're part of God's plan, or?
Well, yeah, it's a big question. It's a horrid question. I mean, I'm going to see, literally in a minute, I'm going to see my dad who's down with, I say down with, like it's a cold. Yeah. He's down with dementia.
Touch of dementia this week.
He's got a touch of the dementia. And it's been a horrible, you know, it's been 6 months. 6 months ago, he was absolutely fine, or seemingly fine. And then now there's nothing of him left. He's a shell of a man. You know, it's been a horrid time. It's been awful. But how do I reconcile that? I don't reconcile it. No. I don't. But I occasionally I found myself kind of rant praying to God, going, why this? Why him? You know, good guy, horrible end to his last chapter of his life. Really not. Brain disease is nasty. Yeah. You know?
They say it's worse for the people around the person suffering.
Yeah, it's been awful.
Probably quite blissfully unaware.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, we've been surrounded by kindness, goodwill, friendship. Really good people have come through, and it's been heartwarming to see. I mean, by contrast, my godfather, who I've not really, if I'm honest, seen for 40. I'm 46. I'm 46 today. It's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday!
Thanks very much. I've not. My godfather, he lives down in Cornwall. I'm up in Guildford, so we share Christmas cards, and that's about it. I don't really see much of it. But in the last 6 months, he's been checking in with me every week about how my dad is. He's come to visit him from Cornwall to Guildford, you know, 5-6 times. We've had some catch-ups. We had some coffees. I've seen him, been in touch with him more in the last few months than I have in 45 years before that. He's a lovely guy. I've seen genuine kindness and compassion from him. He died over Christmas suddenly, heart thing or something. We don't even know what it was, but he was found sudden, and it was like shocking. It's like, well, this guy who's been there for my dad all the time in the last 6 months, even despite living 5 hours away. And then you reconcile that and go, do you know what though? He went suddenly and quickly. My dad's not going suddenly and quickly at all, but the kindness that I've seen from him and that connection that I've suddenly gained from him. What a last chapter he's had of his life. You know, he's had 6 months of just being there for his old best mate who he met when he was 18. And I can't argue with that, really. You know,
it's a bit like your headmaster with the box of chocolate.
Yeah.
It's like this bad thing has brought out a side of a good side of people.
It can,
so maybe that's what these tests are. Totally. I don't know.
And at the same time, there's been anger, there's been bitterness, there's been resentment, there's been all that negative stuff as well. So in a way, I can only reconcile it by going, I don't think this is I don't think God's plan necessarily is for my dad to be as ill as he is, just as it was for me, my bladder to be born on the outside. You know, I think sometimes, you know, shit happens. Let's go there. Yeah. You know.
You believe in the other guy then? Because this is something I've always wondered about. Do you believe in the Satan? The argument I found most compelling. I did theology as a degree,
at uni, and I'm not saying that gives me all the answers. It just means I
No,
look.
but
But
it shows that you've thought about it to a level.
I considered it,
Yeah.
and the one I found most compelling was because I'd never liked the I devil, Satan, guy with horns. I know many Christians who believe in a kind of a physical, almost personal. I don't think anyone believes in the red horns and a pitchfork, but I think I personally struggle to believe in such a thing, because in a way that involves some sort of connection, relationship with, and I don't really buy that. So I was most compelled by the argument, what do they call it? The absentia boni, I think it is, the absence of good. That actually, if there's a hell, if there's a devil, if there's a Satan, that's just a way of giving a name to the absence of good. And actually it's not so much about that there's a physical thing there, as that actually, if you take away the goodness and the love, what are you left with?
And do you think that then there are sort of like march towards secularism in this country, it leaves a vacuum in which that can sort of manifest?
Well, I think whether or not I think personally, I think society has moved away from a belief in hell or Satan or whatever, generally speaking.
But could that not be a bit of a... Sorry to interrupt, but that could not be, like you said, you don't believe the earth was made in 6 days. Is that not the same sort of thing? It's just an allegory of a bit of poetry, poetic license, should we say, to describe giving in to your... that lizard part of our brains that we do have.
Totally. And in fact, so much of that very idea of, like I said, the pointy horns and the pitchfork, all those sorts of things that clearly, there's no bit in the Bible that goes, and thus the devil walked in with his pointy horns and his pitchfork and his little pixies.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not in there. A lot of this stuff is literature, it's art, it's Dante's Inferno, it's all of this stuff that's hundreds of years. It's fiction stories that have been added to over the years as a way of talking about the human condition and talking about life, the universe and everything. And I get that, and they can be entertaining. I like a horror film myself. I like a horror read. I like Stephen King. I like H.P. Lovecraft. I've read those things. So it's a way of processing stuff. I think all of it is a way of processing stuff. I'm not saying what the right way. I'm not saying that therefore I know the authority on what's right, what is true and what isn't true. But I think those beliefs that then people latched onto as this is a thing to believe in, I don't personally buy that. But in terms of what you said, in terms of the vacuum that is left with, in a way, although we're not calling any such thing hell or Satan or anything, I do think that, like I said, if it's an absence of good, we can see in the world today places where there is an absence of good, an absence of love, an absence of compassion, and that can be in a person. There are disruptors, I think, who might lack some of those elements of compassion and love and joy, and places in the world where you can see, the shock in the Middle East of what happens when you just wipe out areas, or Ukraine, where you just go, it looks to me like there is a plan there from a leader to just, what happens when we wipe this off the map? And that is an absence. We're looking there at an absence of people, absence of life, absence of hope, arguably, although they say hope's the last thing to go, So I don't know. These are huge questions, and I'm just a bloke, I haven't got all the answers. But
no, of course you haven't. But this is the thing, is because, like I said, I was getting back to that. It's like, because I've started to sort of imagine my life if I did accept Christ into my life, and I kind of I sort of like ponder how it will affect my day to day. Right, the argument with people, you can avoid that. The people sneering, I'm used to that anyway. Because I'm sort of becoming more aware. I'm much more comfortable being vulnerable now. I was brought up not to be like that, and I'm sort of like finding a vulnerability. I'm very comfortable saying I don't know things, but want to find out what we can. But ultimately, as you touched upon earlier, I don't think we will ever know, nor should we. I think we went a step too far when we started to look at atoms. I think that's just sort of like, I just think, oh no, because they're like, oh, well, they can appear in two places at once and they can be waves and particles. And it's like, no, I need to know if the brick is on the table. If the brick is made of things that are there and aren't there, is the brick on the table? Yeah. So I feel like since the atomic age as well, I think things have got weird.
It has got weird. It's definitely got weird.
I don't think anyone ever reported a UFO, whatever they are, because they now seemingly seem to have come out and confirmed them. Yeah. So for years I derided, which again, like people can be about Christians, easy targets to deride. I derided people that believed in UFOs. It turns out I owe them an apology of some
Yeah.
sorts because, so we don't know anything.
No,
I think looking at atoms was us, because okay, scientists who I always thought you had the two teams, you had the religious people and the scientists, and they were always like, well, no, you find out that Newton and these people were actually religious people. But the scientists will go, no, there's no creator, evolution, blah, blah, blah. And then they go, oh, no, now we think it's a simulation. And it's like, well, what the hell is that if that's not a creation?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, yeah.
Is that right. Which is more unbelievable to me, but somehow palatable to the science community to say it's all in a simulation. This was created by someone.
It's all belief systems. You can believe, and in a way, I just think that freedom to believe what you want to believe, and to talk about it, people can push back against it. I've had this on the comedy circuit, like I said, people discuss stuff, but ultimately, I'm not going to be bullied out of my beliefs. I believe what I want to believe, and
I respect that.
I might adapt that in time, might change that and go, I've thought about this. And I'm finding this, that, the other. I'm finding think this differently than I used to, whatever. But in terms of, as you said, how it might affect your daily life, I think some of those wider questions about science and how that fits, those are, that can be keep you up at night ponderances and the like.
They do.
But the day-to-day stuff, I think the heart of the Christian belief, I think, is that thing, Jesus said about the most important commandment really is love God and love your neighbor as yourself, and so the love God part, you can pray, you can just send them a message, and you can just work out if you feel that is enriching your life and a sense of truth to that. And the loving your neighbor as yourself bit, that's how, in terms of my faith, I think has probably hopefully changed me the more I engage with that part of it. Because for years as a kid, I wasn't really looking out for people in that sense. I'm not saying I'm great at it now, but I do think that over the last decade or two, maybe I've tried to do a little bit more of just that sense of compassion and just that sense of trying to put myself in other people's shoes, not assuming I know what they think, trying to listen more, trying to just be a bit more caring to and responsive, not being a soft touch necessarily, but also realizing that we can never know what battles people are going through.
That's true.
And just listening, really.
So is it just like a kind of, just like a bit of a moral touchstone in your mind, really? It sounds like you just go, oh, try and think of this through the prism of my faith, and what's the right thing to do? Because not always the first thing that comes to mind is the right thing to do, is it?
No, it's not exactly. And I think, doing all this without judgment as well, it's not easy. Sometimes you might think you have an opinion on the other, what another person should do, but actually often it's not about what I think. It's about what situation they're struggling with, and there's we all go through different struggles. And like I said, I'm doing this. Our season lately has been defined by my dad's condition over the last 6 months.
Sorry to hear about that.
No, that's right. But I know people who are going through, you chat with someone and you chat and realize they're going through exactly the same thing, or they have done that with their mum or their brother or their son or their daughter, whatever. And it's, all of that can be horrible, but you don't know that stuff unless you just check in now and then.
So do you feel then that your faith makes you see yourself as a part of, brotherhood? So, because I think now with social media, certainly, I can't see how we're not just churning out more narcissists than ever. Everything's about me. I'm comparing this. Oh, Paul's got a Lamborghini. He's posting a picture of that. I haven't got one. I want one. And it's all that. So, but you're talking like, I'm going through something awful, which you did as a child. It's probably where you got this perspective from, maybe. But you're going through something terrible with your father, and your godfather died. And you just said, I speak to other people, and they're going through worse. That connectivity of, because a narcissism think, I don't care what you're going through. I don't care if someone's going through worse than me. I'm going through this, and I feel sorry for myself. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. So do you think that your faith makes you see yourself as a part of a bigger picture?
I think to a degree, yeah. I mean, I think, and to pick a secular angle on this as well, I remember sounds like we're mates, hearing once a talk given by, that's rather different, John Lloyd, the comedy producer who did Blackadder and QR and all that stuff. And he has this attitude of the most important thing he said is to just get out of the way of other people. I think he calls it absenteeism is his belief, that actually if you're part of a team as a producer, get the good people around you and then create the conditions where they can thrive, and then step back and let them thrive, let them live and let them be. And I think so often, I mean, I've noticed this. There's a couple of people linked with our church. In fact, the woman who, lovely lady, elderly lady, who we just got chatting to during the pandemic, realised that she goes to this church right near our house, and just realised it's such a lovely community. And you'll ask her how she is, and she has the habit of deflecting straight away and asking her how you are. Before you know it, you're telling her how you are. And you think, I didn't find out how she's doing. And actually, if you really drill down, they're going through their own tough times and this, that, and health things and this, that. But she's just all about giving, living for others. And I think that's an admirable way of being.
It's not just admirable, Paul. I'd say so. Even if someone listening to this, and there will be people that don't believe in religion or any, I keep saying, I don't want to say that's God, I would say God, don't believe, but we have in us, whether God put it there or not, we do have I have a compass that when I do the right thing, and it can be altruistic, verging on, I don't know if altruism is actually possible, if you're aware of altruism. I think that might be what the Garden of Eden was about, right. you know too much. Like I say, if you understand altruism, I think it's impossible. But when you do something right by others, a different dopamine hit. It's a different dopamine hit to, if someone drops £50 on the floor and I put it in my pocket, there is a dopamine hit. I've got £50. Tapping them on the shoulder and returning it, that hits different. It might be programmed in us. It might be evolutionary if you believe in that. But there's something in us about doing the right thing feels right.
Yeah.
Is that? I mean, I don't know. Is that what God is? Because when I was young, I remember I went to just the normal Church of England school that was closest to our house. You know, just sort of like one of those sort of just the school you went to, and there was these songs about and then the hymns and He's everywhere and. I was thinking, how can he be everywhere? And then you get older, you go, well, the only person who's everywhere is me.
Right.
You know, like the only person who's been everywhere I've been is me.
Yeah.
And the person who knows if I've shafted someone is me. And if I never get caught for it, I know that. And then sometimes when your head hits the pillow, it could be 25 years later, all of a sudden I'll have this memory. No, I'm not talking bad stuff. I was no criminal. I'm just talking little things that you're not proud of.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, this is the pearly gates in a way. This is because know the cartoon of he reads everything you've ever done.
Yeah.
That's inside all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I don't get things right. I'm constantly thinking, I've not said the right. I've been bad towards that person. Not said the right thing there. Not been as supportive as I could have been. You know, not being as this, that, the other. And you can beat yourself up about it, or you can just go, look, tomorrow I'll try better.
Is that, because I was going to say, because obviously the Catholics have got that confession booth, which is, how do you feel about that? Because you haven't got the sort of like, is it Anglican? What are you, just Church of England?
Yeah, Anglican, Church of England.
There's no, why? Because I'm in no way deriding any particular religion, but I used to work in London. I used to walk past the Church of Scientology. Right. Now, I know some people, whatever, but they would say, do you want to come in and do this audit? And apparently you go in and you hold these things and they say, right, Paul, tell us the worst thing you've ever done. And then they've kind of got you. Well, the thing is that they've got, I think that's what that confession booth could have been back in the day.
File it away.
Yeah, it's like, come in why don't you come in and tell me the worst things about you? And then it's like, do you want to make a donation on the way out? Like, no, it would be awful if your wife found out about that prostitute. It's like, I'll make a donation.
And you're in.
That's how they've got you, but I don't know. So the one last thing I want to talk to you, we had this planned in for ages, but the wildfires. Now, I don't know where you stand on Rapture, or if you did believe in the sort of Bible version of religion, this does seem like a biblical thing. If you put together what some people see Hollywood as representing, it's like, you know, Hollywood is it Babylonian? What is it? Like it's.
Well, you've got. I mean, the thing is, you've got. It's a Book of Revelation, end of the Bible, which is like pretty much the least preached on book in the Bible. You go to a church, if you hear a sermon, it's going to be on Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels. Maybe some letters from the New Testament, Paul's letters, the Ephesians, the Corinthians, the Romans, which is unpacking Jesus' teachings. It's all Paul's writing for ages, about 13 different letters. You know, here's how we should love each other. Here's how we should work together as a group of people. Here's how a church should be, and not just a church building, but a community. Here's how community living could and should be. And at the end of all that stuff, you've got right at the end the Book of Revelation, which is a bit like the start of the Bible, 6 days, creation, etc., Garden of Eden. is it's a story which is, allegory, arguably, and here is it's basically it's a dream. John, who wrote John's Gospel, one of the evangelists, one of the four gospel writers, had a dream. So he's one of the last people, the last of the disciples to die. In fact, he's the only one, I believe, who wasn't, apart from Judas, who wasn't martyred. All the other disciples the 12 disciples were executed in a variety of unpleasant ways. John, though, exiled to an island, and in his old age, in his dotage, has this dream of revelation of, as you say, sort of the fires, the earthquakes, all the horsemen of the apocalypse and all that sort of thing. So, of course, you can interpret that as like, right, we're waiting for four horsemen.
Are you waiting? It's perfect. Are you waiting for it?
I'm not. I mean, I see. I've had dreams. I know what they can be. You could be running in treacle.
You can. Yeah.
You could have written about that. So I think it's all that. What does the dream mean? Why has it been included in the Bible? There's all those sort of questions. But the only thing I would though. So I'm more of an allegorist, I suppose, in that sense. But in terms of what you're saying about LA and the fires they've had there. But I think I would look at the world at large and go, we've had natural disasters, often which are given less airtime because they're in parts of the world that aren't containing Mel Gibson and the like. But, all across the world, we are getting an increasing amount of them, climate change, etc. Of course, I'm sure that could be responsible. And also, but, a religious look at the world can look at this and go, God, is this, people have talked for years about end times.
It feels like the end times to me, Paul. It does, and I'm not a believer. But I was just looking at it with these drones, and there was fire from the sky. I don't know. I look at it and I go, everything's dead. The gaps between these horrific events is definitely getting shorter.
But and a secular way of looking at that could be we are destroying the planet at great speed, and whether or not these fires in LA, they're already finding cartridges, and they've arrested people for starting this fire and fanning the flames, literally. So we are bringing down harm on the planet, ourselves as people. And you could say, it's the end of the world as we know it because of some religious, God Almighty reason. Or is this just that we are bringing it about ourselves, that we are destroying this, and it's a matter of we're growing closer to that, but we're growing closer to everything because that's how time moves, I suppose.
I guess so, but I just think that the things just seem, like I said, the UFO one. I mean, I went, 10 years ago, if someone said to me, what could be one of the biggest rug pulls or the biggest news things ever, I'd be, that we're not alone. But then they just go, we've got like fighter pilot footage of them locked on these UAPs. They've even changed the name of them to sort of like make it more palatable. And then you got the drones in New Jersey, and everyone just stops talking about that. And I just feel like, I don't know, if I was believed in the Bible, literally, I would always be going, this could be it, because this thing in LA, it looks biblical. I mean, if God did smite down, because I think LA represents something. I don't know, LA's that, especially with some of the revelations lately, or allegations, should I say. But I'm probably rambling now. But
the thing is, I remember I stayed with a couple. I did an event. I do a lot of gigs for churches, comedy shows for churches and things. And I stayed with a couple up in the Northwest about 3 or 4 years ago because I was doing 2 nights in a row. And they said, come and stay. And I said, it's nice Saturday night. Nice to be doing a gig on a Saturday night. And I said, nice. Shame I don't get to watch any Saturday night television. And they said, yes, of course. Well, it's all Strictly nowadays, isn't it? Well, yeah, you're right. It's all Strictly. And they said, which is, of course, a sign of the end times, isn't it?
Wow, yeah.
And I thought, is it? And they go, well, it's all sequins. It's Saturday night. It's very gaudy. That's one of the signs, isn't it, of the 4 horsemen? And I wasn't quite sure. And I was looking at you.
Yeah.
You are serious. And they were serious. And they were going, and that for them was enough. It was like they turned on the telly, maybe expecting, I don't know, a generation game.
Yeah.
Instead of dancing and, shirts open to the waist, and that was like, no, it's culturally we've gone,
Yeah, I mean, I think people have always predicted the end is nigh. The guy with the sandwich board that says the end is nigh.
Yeah,
that's been a trope for as long as I've been around. So
yeah.
Have you ever? So have you ever had a real big test where have you ever thought? Have you ever doubted your faith?
I think I doubt it a lot. I just feel like it's I think like I do feel for me that faith is just the flip side of the same coin as doubt, really, and that actually, I know some people, I think, who some churches maybe particularly, who are maybe the more evangelical ones, who where it's about you know Jesus and you know God, and once you are there and you're over the threshold on that, doubt is to be, is a thing to be. Is doubt is shame in a way in those sorts of places. I think for me though, maybe it's more the Anglican Church of England way, but is that actually those mini doubts? Like I almost want to start each day afresh.
Yeah.
With a bit of doubt. And I see that as healthy for me because I'm there going, okay, I'd like my faith to be living and active. And some days I probably do believe more than I did the previous day. And some days maybe less so. And I hope if there were a graph over time, it's going the right direction or it's at least level. But yeah, I do think that some days, yeah, I do have these doubts, but I question it. I think it's about questioning. I think I question it.
Yeah, that sounds healthy.
I come down on the side of, yeah, I believe that this is created. I believe this is created, and I believe it's created by a God who I have a relationship with in prayer, and who didn't just start things off years ago, but also is actively involved in our lives. Now, of course, the question then is, as you said earlier, if he's actively involved in our lives, how is it that we have illness and ailments and suffering and torture and all of those things? And I haven't got an answer to that, but then I think I probably don't need to have an answer to that.
I guess that's why I asked you if you believed in Satan, because I guess that would be that seems like the answer, doesn't it? Back then, yeah, it's like, good and evil.
Yeah.
But that sounds really good. That sort of just sounds like, I mean, I had it when I started doing comedy. I'm sure you've had a bad gig. I've never seen it myself, but you could have a bad gig and you can get in the car and go, should I be doing this? And then when you go, no, I'm going to carry on, there's an extra level of resolve and maybe it just redouble your efforts a bit. So that sounds like a really good way to start every day with a bit of doubt and then overcoming it.
Yeah, I'd not considered that actually, but you're quite right. That similarity between self-belief and self-doubt, you're quite right, is that actually if you just always believe in yourself and go, well, of course I'm the best, and I know comedians like that as well. I'm sure well, I am the best and I deserve all of these acclaims and everything. That's a different way of being than actually having to regain that self-belief. I mean, yeah, you have some knocks and you go, okay, I'm picking myself up. Do I want to do comedy? Yes, I do. I still want to do this. Yes, good. And to ask yourself that question and to have those.
That seems so much more positive than just, not to say sleepwalking through your life one day after the other without challenging or questioning yourself or everything. I don't think it's healthy to spend all day thinking about it like I sometimes can, because I don't know why, Paul. I am basically a moron, but I think about everything like I'm going to be the one that works it all out. I don't know where that comes from.
Well, maybe you are.
That's why I always said, I mean, the greatest minds haven't worked out. Maybe this guy could do it.
You're the new prophet. This is it.
Well, that's all. I'm clipping that. So I wanted to ask you about that, having doubts, and if you had to sort of like, you're in court and you have to give one piece of evidence for your faith. Have you got one thing that you go, is there one sort of just aspect of life that points to a God to you?
I mean, it's sort of a weird kind of jokey thing, and I do use it on stage sometimes actually. But the weird thing is that if there is one bit of evidence, and I don't believe it's an evidence, it needs to be an evidence-based faith, because I think that's part of the point of faith, is it's not a thing you necessarily look in the fridge and go, oh yeah, I've got a bit of God there.
No, sure.
But for years, I thought I couldn't have kids because of all of my hospital wranglings as a child myself. I was told by doctors wouldn't be able to have kids. Grew up thinking that was the case. Didn't bother with relationships much at school, and because I had that weird thing in my head, like, oh, my life has been planned out like this. There's no family at the end of it, so why bother? Became a bit of a nerd. Became a bit of a maths geek. I've done a bit of that on stage as well, and a film geek. Loved it. I used to see every single film out. Then got married. Found wife. Got married. Had kids. Baffled doctors. They thought wasn't going to happen. Did happen. And both our kids have the geekiest birthdays possible. And one's a maths geek and one's a film geek in their birthdays. My daughter's birthday is May the 4th. Right. May the 4th be with you, Star Wars Day. And I'm a film geek. Tick. My son's birthday, and I'm a maths geek as well, always a big maths nerd, and his birthday is 10-10-10. 10-10-10. 10-10-10.
Binary, yeah.
Binary. And if you translate that back into decimal, it's 42, which is the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
Hitchhiker's Guide.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So if that's not the geekiest thing imaginable, and it feels bespoke, it feels like that's a little gift to me, and I'm grateful for that. It's either it could well be a massive coincidence, but it could be a little Easter egg that God has put there for me. And obviously, as a Christian, I believe in Easter, and therefore I believe in Easter eggs.
And well, I think all children are a miracle, but yours must seem more so. Must feel like your own personal miracles.
Yeah, we don't think of them as that every day.
No, no. Trust me, man. Got three.
Again, we remind ourselves now and again that actually, this was not expected, planned. We didn't think this was going to happen for us, and here we are. But I don't take it lightly, because I know people they're very close to us who have really wanted kids and been unable to, and some have adopted, and some have just gone, it's not for us, and all these. It's a huge thing, but for us, this is where we're at, and we still have our ups and downs in life, but we are on a steady path.
That's such a lovely way to end. That's so heartwarming. I felt quite emotional you telling us that.
Oh, we try.
No, really, but thank you so much. And happy birthday, Paul. Thank you so much.
You.
That was really interesting. Thank you for speaking so candidly and being just so. It's interesting to speak. Sometimes the fear is, if you don't know religious people or you don't probe or talk to them, that they're going to be. You're just nice to just see someone who's very down to earth, matter of fact about it, and not fire and brimstony, or you know what I mean, don't you? Just sort of like,
well, not today, but tomorrow.
Yeah,
my new beliefs and doubts that I'll wake up with, go, I think that fire and brimstone. There's not enough of that in our life.
Yeah, well, that's what's going on at the moment. So, where can people find you, Paul, if they want to follow you or see you or whatever?
I'll be in this chair most of the day, no, I'm currently on X/Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. But I'm thinking maybe instead of canning all that and just going to Substack and mailing list, that might be the new thing.
Okay,
but for now,
have you got a Substack?
Not yet, but I think any day.
And it would be Paul KERENSA.
It's Paul KERENSA, and I'm mostly posting about the origins of the BBC. That's my current project, the early days of broadcasting.
Oh, fascinating.
So that's my new thing, as well as writing sitcoms. We're doing Not Going Out, the new sitcom of that, and books and comedy. So there you go. That's the plan.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. As I said, happy birthday, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Happy birthday to you when it's your birthday.
Okay, thank you very much.